Hello, I'm Leah from Lakora Yoga, and today I'm being joined with Jenny Lowry, who is a therapist who works for the NHS. So I'm going to introduce her now, and yeah, we can find out a little bit more about her. So, hi, Jenny.
Hi, thanks so much for asking me to do this. It's really cool. So as Leah said, I'm Jenny. I am from Northern Ireland and I live in a little town that's near the seaside with my husband James and our dog Lola. So we just moved here about 5 weeks ago and it's unreal. If you can move to the sea, do it. Um, so yeah, I currently work 30 hours a week in the NHS as an occupational therapist. I'm in the community there at the minute, but I also have my own private practice. I'm self-employed as an OT, where I focus on helping people create work-life balance through like stress and time management. And apart from all that, I love traveling and good food.
Yep, that's always good to help with mental health and stuff, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So, what is it that brought you to that kind of job?
Okay, so I always kind of, whenever I was at school, I always knew that I wanted to be an occupational therapist. I'd seen a lot of like my family members get help from them, and basically the whole thing with OT is just helping people like do the things that they want to do more of in life. And I thought, this is for me. I want to do that. So as I say, I'm currently in the NHS working 30 hours a week, and I have my own private practice. The reason I started my own business was because a couple of years ago I was working in a corporate job before I was in the NHS, and I was totally overwhelmed, totally stressed out, and hit that burnout stage. And it was really not a nice place to be in. And whenever I trained as an OT, then I thought, I'm going to use my experience, I'm going to use my mental and physical health training to help other people avoid that stage. So what I do now is help people, as I say, create that work-life balance.
Yeah. So what is it that made you realize that you needed that help, that you were stressed and overwhelmed?
So for me, like I think everybody's triggers are different, but in general, it shows up in your body first before I think you realize that you're stressed. Um, for a lot of people, I find that anyway. So whenever we're stressed out, basically, like it triggers hormones in our body, and that um triggers like a stress response, that fight, flight, or freeze that we get. So for me anyway, my stress triggers were like headaches and not sleeping very well, and my skin really flared up. So I would get eczema, and my eczema was crazy whenever I was really stressed. It was all around my eyes and everything. It was horrible. And I just knew I wasn't myself. You know, people were telling me, you know, you're not yourself, you look awful, and all that kind of thing. So that's when I knew that I needed to take a step back and take a break and reevaluate things.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people go through that kind of feeling, like with the bad skin and the no sleep, and they don't realize that it's stress that's doing it. I think a lot of people get confused, don't they, as to what's
Yeah,
happening to them. Yeah.
absolutely. And like stress is such a big thing with any sort of like illness. Like I read something recently and it was like 80% of chronic illnesses can be linked to stress in some way, which I just thought was unbelievable. Um, so if you can, you know, get on top of your stress levels, the sooner the better, really, before you kind
Yeah.
of get into that kind of chronic illness stage.
Yeah. So if people are going through this right now and they're seeing any of them signs, what advice
Mhm.
do you think that you could give them that could help?
Could help. So, well, I'm a big fan of like proactive stress management. So doing things to help you manage your stress before you actually feel stressed, but that's obviously not helpful whenever you're already like over the line. If you're
Yeah.
at that stage, then I would advise, if you can, take a step back from whatever it is. It's like your main stressor. So if it's work, take a few weeks off work. I understand, like if you have, you know, if it's your family or your kids or something that are really getting on top of you, that's a totally different ball game. Um, but asking for help is massive. Like you cannot, it's way more difficult to recover from this kind of stuff when you're on your own. So even if it's just having a friend there to talk to about it all, then that can be really really powerful. But start small. So think about like your sleep and stuff as well. Like sleep's a big thing for me that goes first whenever I'm stressed. So if you can have like a something to help you wind down at night, like a really good nighttime routine, and you can incorporate like stress management stuff into that. So you go to bed, like for example, at the minute I start my wind down at 9 o'clock, which I know is quite early for some people, but I get up at 5:30, so I need to go to bed early.
Yeah.
So my routine is get a shower at 9, in bed for 9:30, read for 15 minutes, meditate for 10 minutes, and then lights out by 10.
Yeah.
So if you can have that bedtime routine, that's really helpful when it comes to sleep. And even like journaling all the things that are going on in your head, just to get them out of your head before you actually go to bed, can be really helpful as well. Sometimes 9 times out of 10 when I do that, I read it the next morning and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
It's not even a thing anymore. So yeah, with the sleep, that would be one thing. The second thing, so like really just take it back to basics, your sleep, your meals, what you're eating. If you're kind of running on unhealthy food, then obviously you're going to feel worse. If you can try and implement healthier meals and healthier snacks into your life, that will make a massive difference. Because I know a lot of people comfort eat when they're stressed as well.
Yeah,
So
I was going to say, yeah.
like,
so what do you think is the best way to incorporate that then? Because I think, yeah, when people are stressed, they do just reach for the rubbish food, don't they? It's so easy to do.
And I am so there with you. Like my thing is crisps. Like I love crisps. I am such a savory person. And at the minute, like we get free snacks from work, which is a lovely gesture. But I don't need a big box of like 72 packets of cheese and onion crisps sitting beside me, especially when I'm working on stress. So if you can remove that temptation, that's really helpful. Not having things like that in the house. If you're feeling snackish, maybe have something like a healthier alternative, so you're not completely depriving yourself. It can be helpful as well, because you obviously don't want to get into that good food, bad food kind of, mindset either.
Yeah.
So distracting yourself, if you feel like you're comfort eating or you are emotional eating and you can recognize that, like try and be like switched on enough to recognize that and do something different. And I know that's hard, but that's where the accountability and having a friend there to kind of keep you going with that is helpful. Like last night, I actually talked about it on my Instagram stories. I was like, I want to eat crisps, but I'm not going to eat crisps because I've already had a packet today. I'm going to go for a walk instead.
Yeah, it's having that control and that discipline, isn't it, for yourself as well? Yeah,
it's so hard. Yeah, and that's where creating the environment where it's easier for you is helpful. So like not having, for example, me not having crisps in the house.
So
just
how would you say, because obviously having that not in the house is the best thing to do, but when you've got children around,
that's
trickier.
hard. It is, and I can't personally relate to that at the minute, but I guess it's just about that self-awareness, isn't it? And I think getting in that mindset where you kind of value yourself enough to make good decisions, which is easier said than done. And whenever I tell people that, it's a bit like tough love, but whenever you let yourself kind of feel like, oh, I'm not worth it, so I'm just going to eat crap, then you're going to feel like crap, and I get into that cycle. Whereas if you kind of choose, be like, well, no, I know eating a packet of crisps isn't actually going to make me feel any better. I'm going to feel guilty about it later on and I'll regret it, so I'm going to choose to do something which is better for me, even though it's the harder decision in this like right now. But yeah, having somebody there is really helpful as well if you can. Like accountability is great.
Yeah, and I guess it's good for children as well to see you doing that, to see you eating healthier and to looking after yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, unhealthy food is great. Like as I said at the start, like I'm a foodie. I like food, but you need to know yourself where the line is. You can enjoy unhealthy food, but it's not good for you in the long run. So
yeah, that's right.
So there's some massive things, yeah.
A lot of people talk about stress and anxiety, and I mean, I know I've seen it on the internet a lot. It's always stress and anxiety. It's always like put together. So is there a difference, or what would you say is the difference, or are they pretty much the same thing?
I think they sort of manifest themselves in a similar way in the body and in how you feel about it and how you react to it. Anxiety, I think, generally is more of like an acute stress thing. So like in the moment before you do something. Like for example, whenever I was at uni, I hated doing presentations, which is funny because I can do things like this now, no problem. But I would get really anxious and really worked up, really stressed before doing a presentation, but it came back down again straight after. I think chronic stress, which is what a lot of people experience now, is that kind of just like undertone of constant stress. And I think that's a little bit different to anxiety. Anxiety is more, in general, it is more kind of in the moment related to one thing. Stress can be more of like a constant. And I know it's not black and white, because there can be like generalized anxiety disorders and things like that. So they do interlink, but that is kind of how I would distinguish them, because I've experienced both at different times. So that's how it's been different for me.
Yeah. And so if people are feeling quite stressed, when do you think, I know you said you can talk to a friend, and you know, it's that self-discipline yourself as well, but when do you think that they might need professional help?
Oh, anytime. I think we need to normalize going to therapy and going to your GP and asking for help when it comes to this kind of stuff, because that was one thing for me. Like, I really resisted going to therapy, and I only went a couple of years ago for the first time, but it was so helpful. And even at that point, I didn't feel like I really needed it then, but I had a lot of stuff I had to work through that I hadn't in the past. So I think if you just have that option available to you, like, do a bit of research, ask around, even just look up on Instagram. Like, there's loads of people on Instagram doing this kind of stuff now, but like, be careful with that too. Ask your GP just for recommendations of people you can go to who are professionals in this and have been trained in it and know, you know, how to manage it in terms of like evidence-based stuff, and not just, you know, go and do this because this worked for me, if that makes sense. But yeah, I would definitely think we need to be more kind of open about that and just make it okay, because you go to your GP if you have migraines, so why wouldn't you go to your GP if you have anxiety?
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's so funny seeing things about America and stuff where, you know, loads of people go to therapy. It's a completely normal thing. Yeah, it definitely should be more normalized over here. Definitely. Yeah. So can you tell us about a time where you were struggling and what you did to overcome it?
Yeah, so I touched on this a little bit at the start, but whenever I was in my early 20s in my first like big girl job, I hit that like burnout stage and totally stressed, totally overwhelmed. I could go into detail on it, but I won't. If anybody is interested, then I have it saved in my story highlights on Instagram, so you can go and check that out if you want to. But basically, when I hit that point, I took some time off work, which I would definitely encourage people to do if that is possible for you. It's really hard to heal in the place where you've been like so badly hurt. And that's a metaphor for more than just job life. But yeah, take some time away if you can. What I did to kind of recover from that then was I looked at like my basic self-care habits, so how I was sleeping, what I was eating, how I was moving, and took steps to make them more healthy and more beneficial for me, and kind of changed my mindset in the gym as well, because I was always like, I'll go to the gym because I'm going to get strong, or I'll like lose weight or whatever. Whereas then I just decided, well, I'm going to go for a walk because I like going for a walk. So I kind of changed my attitude towards movement as well, which is really helpful. And once I kind of got those three things down, like the really basic stuff that we kind of forget about sometimes, that's when I started implementing more like proactive stress management stuff in. So I never thought I'd be the type of person who would do yoga and meditation. Like, I did not think it was for me, but like, I'm a total convert, like love it. So things like yoga, breath work is unbelievable for me as well. Sitting with a book that I enjoyed. I spent so much time studying at uni that I could hardly read, because I just felt like I was having to learn all the time. If I just pick a book that's a story, that's so helpful for me. I think I find that more helpful than like watching something on Netflix.
Yeah.
And spending some more time outside as well has been one of the biggest things for me, which is great now because I have a dog, so I have to go outside every day.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I set boundaries as well, was a massive thing at work. You know, I stopped going in early, I stopped staying late, I took my lunch break, all those sorts of things. I set expectations with people of what work I was going to provide and what I could take on and stuff. And that's applicable to like home life and stuff too. I think, especially if you have kids and things, like I can't imagine how chaotic that is sometimes, but like my husband and I we try and look at each of our schedules every week and plan when we're going to be in the house together. Okay, well, you're doing the housework that day, or you can walk the dog that day, and kind of split it up between us so that it's not falling more on one person than the other. And that will look different obviously for different families, but because it'd be very easy for me not to set any boundaries and then just being a woman take on most of the housework role. Which I need to set that boundary myself and be like, well, no, you live here too. So we need to share this. So boundaries is massive. And because of all that, then I don't feel like I will reach that burnout stage again. And if I do feel like I'm starting to, then I know what to do to pull myself back from it.
It's a little bit like you're finding your true self again, aren't you? Because you're setting boundaries and you're doing things that you want, instead of most people doing the normal life, go to work, come home, go to work, come home. It's you've got to be quite a strong person, so well done you for like setting all that to do yourself, making yourself do it.
It's so hard. Yeah, well, that's the thing, and that's a lot of the work I do with people whenever I'm working with them is mindset work, because as I mentioned a little bit before, a lot of people don't value themselves enough to actually put themselves first. And I think, like, especially if you're a mom, like, or a dad, there's that tendency to say, oh, the kids come first, or, you know, the house comes first, or this kind of stuff comes first. And while absolutely those things should be like top three, you can't give yourself to anything else if you look after yourself first.
Yeah.
Even if you don't have any responsibilities, you still should look after yourself first,
Yeah.
just because you're you.
I always remember hearing this thing, and it said, name 5 people that you love. And it was like everybody wrote down these things and nobody put themselves on that list.
Yeah.
And it was such a like, whoa, oh yeah.
Yeah, that's really powerful.
Mm.
Yeah. So yeah, mindset is definitely a big thing, that once people can get over that, then the other stuff is so much easier. Whereas if you're talking about setting boundaries, or you're talking about implementing healthy habits and stuff, you won't stick to it if you don't actually think that, you know, you're worth it, if that makes sense.
Definitely.
Some people think that's a wee bit airy fairy, but like, I think it's so
true.
it's so legit.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Awesome. Cool. So before we finish up, first off, is there anything else that you want to
add? Go to therapy if you haven't already.
Yes, that's a great one.
Even if you feel like you don't need to, just go,
Yeah.
see what happens. You will be surprised at what comes up.
Yeah, definitely. And I think people that are a bit worried to do that as well, you can just go to your GP, can't you, and just ask.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah,
just ask for a referral to any sort of talking therapy or CBT, anything like that, or you can pay privately, of course, as well, if you have the means to do that. So
yeah,
there's loads of options out there.
Yeah, awesome. And did you want to mention, I'll put in the description below, any of your website, your social media stuff. Is there anything that you want to say, anything that you've got coming up, or anything that you want to add?
Well, I'm mostly active on Instagram, so if anybody is interested in catching up with me, then that's where I'll be, and my handle will be in the description. At the minute, I have a couple of services available, so I offer like intensive one-off sessions with people where we can kind of like deep dive stuff into like their like what's stressing them out, and how we can kind of reduce that stress and help them manage that stress. And it's kind of like a 90-minute all-in, let's make a plan sort of situation, and then there's a follow-up call as well a few weeks later. I have one for stress management and one for time management as well. And then I have a stress management program, which is 8 weeks long, which again is a bit more, there's more like calls with that and stuff, a lot more support, where we kind of go through everything in your life that could potentially be a stressor, get rid of all the stuff that doesn't need to be there. And then I help you go through all the things that I talked about, like implementing healthy habits and boundaries and managing your time and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, those are the 2 main things that I have going on at the minute.
Awesome. They sound really good. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. And I'm going to stop screen sharing. And if anybody wants any of them details, I'm going to leave them in the description below.